we assume that the precision and speed is going to be enabled by just hitching your wagon to big data. The problem is now the issues of 30 years ago when I began from a data and insight standpoint, we've gone to the other side of the looking glass and we're hanging out with the Mad Hatter and Alice, drinking tea and trying to stay away from the Queen of Hearts. Because we were data poor in 1985 when I began. We're now data rich, but we're increasingly insight poor. That's the big challenge. And if we think otherwise, we're missing the storyline here. It isn't big data for data's sake. It's big data and insight to adjust to an operating environment that's very challenging, to technological change that's very rapid, to customer expectations that are going through the roof, in an environment where we have to do things faster, with more precision, and more cost effectively. Does that describe your business each and every day? Absolutely. And the customers I deal with, doesn't matter what vertical they're in. Yes, financial services, my goodness gracious. It is just a miserable time. Everybody's questioning pay and regulations and lending standards and yada, 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 yada. It's the 1930s all over again. But tech, same pressures. Telco, same pressures. Manufacturing, my goodness gracious, 30 years of having the world turned upside down. Retail, same thing. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, can we bring this all together? And I'm going to give you my best advice on one page. Because the great companies who are successful in bringing art and science together go down a journey. And this journey is about developing the foundational knowledge and, for the most part, being clear on the problems you're solving for. Ask yourself each and every day, are you crystal clear on the business problems you're trying to solve for? Are you clear on your hypotheses about what's getting in your way? I've yet to meet a senior C-level officer who feels like they have all the information. My response always to C-level officers is, tell me what you're solving for. Tell me why you think you have an issue. Second thing is, you've got to bring together all your assets. And this is tough for many companies. Legacy systems, don't have a customer identifier, not collecting data. It's too hard to get my sales team to enter data. I can't collect it in my call centers. Yada, 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 yada. I've heard it all. And my response is, you have to treat it like a transformational initiative and realize that the one proprietary differentiating asset you have is your data on your customers. Your competition does not have that. So if you choose not to acquire and organize and capture and utilize the data you have on your customers, that is your problem. That is your mistake. Third piece is you got to get to this intimate view, which involves third-party data, but it means single, complete, and actionable view. Those words have been chosen very precisely. One view, a complete view, and an actionable view. The next part of the equation is you got to do something with it, which is where analytics comes in. And then the fifth step, as you go through this journey, from data to insight to foresight to action, is you have to put a virtuous cycle around it. You have to continuously learn. You have to have the infrastructure by which you can track whether or not the actions you're taking are having the desired outcomes. So let me turn this into practical solutions. So I suspect that most of you in this room would like to improve your sales optimization. What your sales force is doing every day and with whom to have the most desired outcomes. Because certainly in the B2B world, that business-to-business world, the sales force matters disproportionately. How many in this room believe that their sales force matters to their business, by a show of hands? Everybody look around real quickly. See all the hands up? Matters a lot, right? Well, the question is, with your sales force, who to talk to, when, where, through what channel, and what's the conversation? Historically, we relied on the fact that the feet on the street knew best. Don't get me wrong, feet on the street has a lot of knowledge. But I ask you, could you improve how they spend their day? by giving them insights with regards to existing customers and prospects. Anybody here disagree with that? By a show of hands, how many people would like to do that tomorrow? Just about all of you, once again. The key to that journey is as follows. Can you bring those assets together? And what we see with companies increasingly on sales optimization is they capture all the insight from their sales teams, past interactions, past customer relationships, past responsiveness to overtures. They're capturing their call center data, those customer interactions. They have a complete view of their past history with those customers. And then they're augmenting that with third-party information about what's going on with those customers, what's happening in their business, and they're creating the opportunity to prioritize. By the way, my experience tells me that in most cases, your sales force is spending the bulk of their time with low risk, low growth opportunities with customers and not spending the time with the high risk, high growth opportunities. There are very few companies that I have seen that have that mix right. And to some degree, it's human nature. We go to the customers that we're most comfortable with. We'll go to the customers that we have those deep relationships with. We've built these tools for ourselves at D&B. And what was amazing for us, just to give you some secrets of the trade, is that when we looked at our customers in our commercial channel, 1/5 of our customers in the commercial channel are no risk of defection, very low risk of defection, and very low opportunity for cross-sell and upsell. For some of our resources being decked against, we were spending upwards of 30% of our time on those customers. 1/5 of our customers getting 30% of our time with no return on that activity. Does that prompt us to reprioritize their day? Absolutely. That's the winning hand. Now, it's easy for me to stand up here and say, hey, here it is. And by the way, we'll give this to you guys. You can frame it, put it on your walls, embrace it. I am here today to tell you that doing this is the right thing. Getting it done is hard. It does require a transformational commitment. Most customers that I spend time with end up doing 1 or 2 or 3 of these pieces. But if you don't embrace it as a transformational initiative, because if you really reflect upon what you have to do, there's investments in IT, there's investments in workflows, there's investments in data, but the biggest investment that has to be made is on changing behavior, changing incentives, and business process change. Especially on the back end of this, because you have to change behavior to capture those insights, capture the activity, and look to disposition. Now I'm going to go deep on a couple of these to show you what we're doing to try to help, but let me pause there and say, does that make sense to you? If any of you would like to share stories or tales, please.
Over the last 20 years or so, every so many years, along comes a consultancy company that says, we can change your IT to give you exactly that journey, and have failed. You just look at the big telcos. Vodafone spent 90 million, Cellnet spent, I don't know, 100 million. Cable and wireless was a number that is in that ballpark in terms of huge transformation projects. They tried to do everything at the same time, but failed because legacy systems didn't connect. Right. So no one changed the view that that was a good thing to try and aim for, but actually they had the wool pulled over their eyes to some extent, or the CEOs did anyway, and the CFOs certainly did, in terms of what was possible. Do you think that today's world is different in that that can be achieved? And what is it that's different now than what was happening in the 80s, 90s, sure, and 2000s?
So I think it can and will be achieved by successful companies. I think it's a wonderful question. A few things that I think are essential to achieve it. A, you have to embrace it as a transformational initiative and not just a situation where some initial upfront investment. Two, you should not drive it or run it through your IT organization. I think that is the kiss of death. No disrespect intended to the IT organization. I've done this myself now 3 times in my career. And in all 3 times, I represented the business unit. I had the IT organization as part of my operating group and my steering group, but I think it's an unbelievably large mistake to have it run through IT. IT is used to building something, whatever that something is, and solving a specific set of needs, whether it's storage needs or repository or whatever. This requires a business unit to own and drive and leverage the IT resources go along with it. And then the third reason why I'm optimistic is that there are enablers now that are breaking down some of the bigger impediments that we had in the 90s. So if you think about some of the impediments in the 90s, there's things such as, can I build a common repository? Well, those issues are increasingly being addressed by cloud or providers like Hadoop and others. Second issue is you have more and more companies that are looking for resources that can break down other barriers that go along with it. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm always humbled by the fact that if you're going to do this, this is really, really difficult to do, which is why very few companies have done it successfully. But it's going to happen. It has to happen, and the companies that do it right are going to be most beneficial to them over a period of time. By the way, in the last year, I can't even count anymore the number of global Fortune 500, 1,000 companies that just want to talk to us. They're trying to go through this and they're trying to learn from past experience, which tells me that they're going to keep trying. But my best advice is treat it as a transformational initiative. Realize that it's usually a 3 to 4 year journey. Don't run it out of your IT organization. If there's anybody representing IT, I apologize for that, but I strongly advise don't run it out of your IT organization. Have senior executive buy-in, have the business unit drive the bus, and embrace it across all 5 of these elements. Because if you don't, if you just embrace this element, or you just embrace the workflow tools on the other end, you're going to miss so much of what you're really trying to do. And you got to keep that North Star in front of you. It's a really, really good question. Other thoughts, feedback. Anybody doing this right now? By show of hands. You want to share horror stories? No, I'm just kidding, but please. Would you tell us a little bit about what you're doing? Experiencing the same thing? Not to put you on the spot, but we're here to share. And by the way, if it's been tough, this will be cathartic for you as well.
It's tough getting top-down buy-in in a very difficult environment, and getting executives to be accountable is very, very tough. So a lot of it's been driven about remediation issues, trying to clear things up. Our firm's investing a magnitude bigger than those 100 million numbers across data projects in our portfolio. It's touching everywhere, so real challenge.
Real challenge, absolutely. All right, so let me give you guys a little bit of hope that we are here to help, because it is tough, to your point, and it's a good question. Many companies have failed. By the way, in the States, there's only a couple companies in the Fortune 100 that have actually done this, just to make anybody feel okay about it. Procter & Gamble, who's been doing it longer than anybody else. My old world of General Motors. It took us 4 years and almost $400 million to do it, but we did it. And then you got 1 or 2 other large institutions that are getting closer and closer to doing this. But it is very hard, and so many institutions have failed on this front because, again, they've done parts of it.
Well, what we usually do is use the clap, they'll do one element of it and then forget all the other parts.
That's exactly right.
Let's put SAP in, so we'll have all sorts of answers available without anything up front to give them the information they need. As well as the business having a better view of data they had before.
Yeah. Or put sales workflow tools in and then not change the behaviors, the incentives, the requirement for the sales team to either fully use those tools or to capture the activity and disposition that those tools were supposed to be designed to do. You're absolutely right. You see all these, I call it the magic bullet syndrome, that we all assume that there's some magic bullet out there. And by the way, D&B for a long time, some customers thought of us, and we almost positioned ourselves as a magic bullet. We can give you this magical block of data. And this data, see this magical block of data? If you put it in the ground, it'll grow beanstalks for you. And you go kill the giant and get the gold, and life goes on, and you don't have to worry about giving up the cow. Well, giving you bigger and bigger blocks of data isn't going to solve the problem. We have to be committed to giving you actionable insights that you can embed into your decisioning environment, and if we don't do that, we're not doing our job. And having been a D&B customer for 21 years, one of the reasons I insisted upon us undergoing our own transformation is I knew we had many of these same problems. By the way, D&B, despite the fact that we were a data and analytic company, we couldn't get to a single view of our customers in a systematic process up until about 9 months ago. And we had to make the investment to build those capabilities, despite the fact that we had the riches available to us within our own environment. And by the way, many large data and analytic companies and many large tech customers who go out and market themselves as providing consulting services to companies to do exactly this can't do it within their own environment. In fact, none of them can do it within their own environment. There's not one large tech customer today that can get to a single, complete, and actionable point of view of their customer and embed it into their workflows. Now, they're all trying, and they're waking up one day that they need to do so, but just pause for a moment and think about how ironic it is that companies who do that for a living can't do it for themselves. It's not to pick on them, it's just a reminder to us that the journey is pretty tough. So we're going to hand you a microphone, Chris. Well, you can shout at me. That's quite all right.
You've spoken primarily about the large, long-established companies transforming and taking this road. What about the younger companies that are more likely to adapt to technology more efficiently and more effectively? Do you think that this transformation is different at the other end of the spectrum with newer companies, more mobile companies, and the companies that are probably building and establishing that growth now?
So it's easier for them in some regards because they don't have legacy systems and infrastructure and so on. The flip side is they don't in all cases have the resources. That's the great trade-off between being a large established company. In my days at GM, I had hundreds of millions of dollars of budget because that's what we were. We were a $225 billion company, and you could do those things. But we had legacy systems, 57 legacy systems. We had all the other bureaucracy and so on. So it is this great balancing act. Having said that, we do see younger companies, as they're going through their metamorphosis, having to emphasize where you're at, because at some point in time, the great idea that started your company is not enough to sustain you. And there's a certain maturation process that a company has to go through. And we see this a lot in the tech industry. They were successful, they opened their door, and because of their one great idea, the money just rolls in. But then they wake up one day and realize they've got to manage customer relationships. They have to have a better product development and solutions development process. They've got to deal with prospecting and optimization. So for me, I would prefer a company without all the encumbrances of an established company. So for instance, much easier at D&B for us to get to a single view of our customer than it was at GM. It just took a longer time. Now, GM had resources to do it, and it's been a more balancing or difficult issue for us to deal with, but a great question.